Good evening, friends, and welcome to Wednesday. I almost forgot what day of the week it was, but that's fine. I'm forgetful, that just kind of happens, and I am getting older. I turn 27 in about a week, I think. Let me check the calendar. Oh, yeah, a week from tomorrow. That's insane. I'm almost in my 30s. That's absolutely wild. But it's been a good life. It's definitely had its ups and downs, but I feel like that's just part of life. We just all kind of have our ups and downs. And today was more or less a good day, I'd say. My brain hasn't been all there lately, and I think it's because of my writing burnout. I mentioned it a little bit, but I kind of had my massive writing spree about a week ago. Maybe it's been a little longer by now, I am not quite sure, to be honest. But ever since I had that, I've had a noticeable burnout in my writing. Even though I am taking my own advice from the vlog I recorded at the time about, just kind of let yourself not worry so much about the quality of the story and instead just focus on the action of writing and having fun with it, I've struggled with that. I keep worrying too much about the actual quality of the story, and the more I think about the psychology of that, the more I think it's just attachment to the actual thing I'm doing. These expectations that I'm tacking on, you know, if the story is going to be worth it or not, if it's going to be, just this big piece of garbage that no one's gonna want to read, and the people who do read it aren't going to enjoy it. My brain attaches all these meanings to it, when in truth, all I'm doing is putting a silly story that's in my brain onto a page and giving it to people to read. The rest of it is out of my control. The only thing within my control is how I feel about it and whether or not I actually write. And that's it. It's as simple as that. It's just an action. I just write. I just tap away at this little keyboard and get my story on the page. And sometimes I do struggle figuring out how to put the story on the page because I feel like I'm not as in tune with my imagination as I used to be, especially as a kid. But it is something I hope to improve on a little more as I write. Maybe I just need to give myself time to be with my imagination, to immerse myself in the stories that I come up with, and who knows? Maybe some gold will come out of it. At the least, maybe I'll get a little bit of a bronze. I don't know. I don't know what that analogy was supposed to be, but in essence, it just means that I want to write, and I want to just enjoy the process. Something I did learn kind of the hard way as an adult is that writing isn't always this fun activity. When I was a kid, I guess there was never any expectations attached to my writing, and that's why I was able to write so much. Like, expectations didn't get attached until I started writing a series that people would read. And by people, I meant my old friend Parker and a couple of our friends from high school. And that was about it. But, I did have this expectation of, okay, I wrote this series, I started it, and I'm going to need to finish it. And I never finished it. But that's also because there were only a few of us who knew about it, so I figured it wouldn't matter to anyone if I just moved on and did something else. And Parker and I do talk about it from time to time. I actually still have the first book in the series with me. I think I've shown this on the vlog before. It's a book Parker and I actually wrote together. I had a bunch of friends of mine sign the back. I honestly, unironically love this book. For being a book I wrote in high school, the quality is insane. I actually really enjoyed reading this when I found it. A lot more than the stuff I wrote as an adult, I'll tell you that much. And I don't know what it was. I think part of it is the fact that I had co-authors with me. So Parker was my main co-author, but we had another friend by the name of Matt who helped us write, some of the more detailed combat scenes, because he was kind of good at getting those described. Definitely a lot better than me, that's for sure. But the story is really good. There are 8 main characters in it, and none of them feel like more or less of a main character than another, and I think that's amazing. I'm kind of surprised we pulled something like that off. It's kind of something I'm trying to emulate with my current book, and maybe it's nostalgia glasses blinding me, but it doesn't quite feel the same, even though I'm sure it's still just as good. But when you're in the middle of a project and you're immersed in it all the time, you see every single little flaw. It's like, oh, this character, doesn't feel like this character, or like, would this character say this, or would they do this? Things like that, which are all important questions. They're very valid. But when they stop you from actually getting the writing done, that's when it becomes a problem. These are questions that should only really come up when you're editing and revising, but I just have this perfectionist mindset where I have to get it right the first time. And I think that's because of the way I've written these books growing up. I would always only write one draft. I would barely edit it, and then I'd just get it published and printed and shipped out, and that's how people would read them. There'd be typos galore, someone would explain something that was explained a page ago, and sometimes I'd forget characters existed entirely, and that still happens. That's why I wrote an outline for my book this time, so that way, I actually have a note in my outline saying, hey, I know by the time you get to this chapter, you're gonna forget what characters are involved in this part of the story, so it's, this character, this character, this character, and this character. Because I know my brain, and I know I'm going to forget, and thankfully, 2023 me knew that, and wrote that into the notes of the outline. But on top of that, I want to actually edit and revise this book, but first I need to actually write the book. But my brain thinks, oh no, it's gotta be perfect the first time because this is the version people are gonna read. But in reality, that's not the case. People are gonna read an entirely different version of the story. Like, more or less. I'm planning on cutting a lot of scenes, I'm planning on probably editing the entire format, because right now I'm sticking to this very stubborn format of odd-numbered chapters have 6 scenes, and even-numbered chapters have 5 scenes. And that's just kind of the format I've stuck with, even though some scenes feel like they could definitely be cut, and I feel like I could definitely add more scenes. But I think the most important thing is that I get the story written. And I keep forgetting that, and I keep assuming I just need to write it exactly how it's going to look when it's published. That's not at all what a first draft is. But I've only ever published first drafts, so that's why my brain thinks that. I just need to kind of reframe it. I've talked about cognitive reframing a little bit in previous vlogs, so I might as well talk about it a little more now. And of course I'm not a professional, so take my words with a grain of salt. Do your own research, and if you can, talk to a professional about this, because it would be very helpful to learn about this, especially if you have similar struggles to me with depression or anxiety, or if you're an artist who's struggling to get your work done. But cognitive reframing is exactly what it sounds like, changing the way you think about something. So the way I think about my books is that they have to be perfect the first time or else they're not worth writing. And I have to wonder, where is that thought coming from? And I think that thought comes from exactly what I just described, that I only ever publish first drafts of my novels. So, what if I were to change that? What if I were to just say, write this book because you want to have fun. Write this book because you enjoy the process of putting a story to paper. Write this book because you want to tell a story. Don't worry about the external things, don't worry about what people are going to think about your story. Just acknowledge that you are creating something from scratch. Something that hasn't existed before. While there may be many other stories, the story you write yourself is special because it's your own story. And unless you're like completely copying or plagiarizing something that previously existed, while you may take inspiration from other pieces of media, it's still going to be your original work, and that's what matters. No matter what people say. Some people might say, oh, this clearly feels derivative of blah blah blah, and I mean, everyone's a critic. People are going to say that. People like to make comparisons. They really like to make comparisons. I know I do. But that's okay. It's still your own work, and regardless of how people react about it, you deserve to be proud of it. And this is as much for you as it is for me, like any other artists, authors, musicians, dreamers, anyone who creates anything. So hopefully this message is kind of good for any of you who might be struggling with the same thing. With that being said, I think I'm going to try to get some more writing done. I won't sweat it too much, and even if it's just word garbage, I'm going to roll with it and try to have fun. Because that's what this was about when I first started, and that's what it should always be about. Thank you guys so much for watching. You are all wonderful people, and just remember to have yourselves a damn good one.